Bless the Lord, O my soul, bless it.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God. As always, let me start the video by saying thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully you'll be edified with what we've put together here for you. Anyway, as you know, I've shared many things about Fr Gabriele Amorth before, and so for this video I'd like to share with all of you 5 interesting lessons that we can learn together from what he said before. Before we get on to the list though, I'd like to share this answer from him. When he was asked to comment on this statement, if we deny the existence of devil, that would also mean we are denying the sacrifice of Christ.
Theology? From a demon?
I know more theology than any human being who has ever lived.
It would also be a misunderstanding of the plan of creation. Not understanding the devil would not mean misunderstanding God. Rather, it would mean misunderstanding the plan of redemption, which is everything that happened following the sin of Adam, original sin. Consequently, for man, salvation became an indispensable necessity because man could not save himself. And just to let you know, as I share the 5 lessons with you, I will also be including a few clips from other exorcists and priests sharing some useful things as well. I hope you don't mind that I do this because I want to maximize the learning we can do together through this video. Anyway, now let's get to the first on the list. Number 1. From many who knew Fr Amorth before, they mentioned many times about his sense of humor, and is also evident in Fr Amorth's dialogues with some of the demons he dealt with. One such demon accused Fr Amorth of being a glutton, and his quick and pithy retort was, "Well, what's it to you?" On another occasion, the devil told him that the citizens of hell are afraid of him because he prays fervently and is therefore in a special way under the protection of Christ and his blessed mother. But Fr Amorth has also reported that the devil is afraid of him because I am uglier than the devil.
The soul does leave the body, it's not just a matter of Christian doctrine. You can see considerable evidence for this as well through near-death experiences, and I think there's almost immediately upon death, the soul does leave the body. It sometimes remains in the operating room looking over things and so forth. It does not necessarily go immediately to a heavenly domain. Although sometimes it does, sometimes it might stay in the operating room for 2, 3, 4 minutes or more before it actually proceeds onto the heavenly kingdom. During that time, while the soul is still present to the body, any kind of administration of a sacrament is just can be very, very spiritually efficacious. I'll use that word again. Spiritually efficacious for the person who is actually witnessing this, although instead of being present to it from their body, they're actually seeing it from above their body looking down, but that's still present to it, and so that would be very efficacious both spiritually and of course in the mind and the heart of the person who's witnessing that act. It's just the soul does leave the body all right. It's when does it go to that other world and is disconnected from the physical body that it once knew.
Number 2. You've probably heard this before about what Fr Amorth said regarding the devil's activity within the walls of the Vatican. Marcello Stanzione, a priest and prolific author who collaborated with Fr Amorth on various writing projects, asked him this: "Is the devil also in the Vatican?" Yes, there are many members of satanic sects also in the Vatican. Who are they? Are they priests or simple laymen? There are priests, monsignors, and even cardinals. However, due to confidentiality pledges and seals, confessional or otherwise, he declined to reveal the sources of his belief that the devil has adherents among Vatican clergy. But Fr Amorth did say this though in the book, "The devil is afraid of me." The devil assails those at the summits, all of the summits, politics, sports, media, and social life in general, but in a particular way, those at the summits of the church. It is well known, unfortunately, that in the Vatican there are persons who are solely careerists, those who are seeking only the things below, not those above. And the devil profits from this, dazzling those who seek success and power. The devil assails those at the summit of the church, the center of Christian life. It is not said that he always succeeds, but where there are persons interacting, there are always human weaknesses.
I think, first of all, the idea of purgatory very much shows you the importance of human freedom and the importance of human freedom after death. as we saw before, Jesus certainly believes in atonement and forgiveness even after death in the life to come. We see that Paul thinks the same thing. Now, so, the whole idea of, this kind of healthy respect for human freedom, that God's not going to just go in there and do a rotor-rooter job on your consciousness, to make you holy, that He's going to allow you in your freedom, the very freedom He gave you on this earth, to choose to move beyond your inordinate attachments with the help of His grace, in this state, removing yourself, or distancing yourself, detaching yourself from these inordinate attachments is not an easy thing.
Right.
It's going to be a challenge. There's going to be grace, but God respects our freedom. And without a doctrine of purgatory, how can you explain how somebody with an imperfect contrition, right, repents out of fear, right, intends to go to confession, but doesn't get there before he dies. This person,
Very good.
dies, he's got these kinds of attachments still. If you have any sense of God's respect for human freedom, if you have any sense that God's going to work with us and through us to get us into heaven, and our salvation is assured, then I would say that this doctrine is a beautiful doctrine. It is a good doctrine. And of course, it is grounded in Jesus and the words of Paul, and certainly also in Maccabees in the Old Testament.
Number 3. When the movie The Pope's Exorcist was released earlier this year, there were a few articles going around that say Father Amorth had performed more than 60,000 exorcisms throughout his time as an exorcist. And naturally, there are many who were skeptical by that figure, saying how can it be possible? And to this question, this is Father Amorth's explanation in regards to that particular claim. According to a rough estimation, I have done about 60,000 exorcisms. Not 60,000 persons naturally. I cannot calculate the number of persons. I can calculate the number of appointments for exorcisms. Today I do about 17 a day. Before there were many more. For example, in the morning, which I reserve for the most difficult cases, I schedule 5 persons. Naturally, if someone does not have an appointment, there is nothing I can do because otherwise I would go crazy. At times it happens that I may do hundreds of exorcisms for the same person. For this reason, I say I can calculate roughly how many exorcisms I have completed, but I cannot say how many persons I have assisted. Let us keep in mind that when I was named Father Candido's successor, I found myself of all those he left behind. I inherited all those in his care, among whom were those who were clearly possessed or tormented by the demon. I found myself with a crowd of people who were certainly disturbed by the demon. Thus, I began immediately with a clientele, among whom there were several who had a possession.
I had an experience which was actually is not that uncommon for seminarians and novices, because the Satan hates people following a priestly or religious vocation, and it's not uncommon. They'll have some sort of spiritual experience trying to move them away from it. So I was lying in bed at night. I was not asleep, and there was it was a powerful spiritual attack. It was very clear. I mean, by the grace of God, I knew what it was, that Satan was attacking me. And it was unbelievably fast and powerful. And I realized that when it flashed, that I would be overcome. It was just lightning speed and incredibly powerful. So my rosary beads, which I now carry with me 24/7, were on the table at the foot of the bed. So I lunged out of my bed and grabbed my rosary beads. And the minute I touched them, it stopped. And I learned, I learned about 80% of what an exorcist needs to know. First of all, I myself do not have the power to cast out Satan, that he's moves with the speed of thought, lightning speed, and is very powerful. But compared to the spiritual power of Our Lady, is nothing. So the minute I invoked Our Lady's protection, instantly it was gone. And that's what we learn in deliverance ministry. By yourself, you can't take care of this. You'll be overcome. But when we invoke God's power in Jesus, and of course through his mother as well, we triumph.
Number 4. Father Amorth was once asked this question: can the demon strike an exorcist? And here was his answer to that question. Anyone can be struck by the demon, with the exception of the one who prays or who lives in the grace of God. Father Candido once said to Father Amorth, "Think of how we exorcists are battered by evil spells, yet they do nothing to us, they do not touch us. We are protected by God and by the angels." So many times, the demons have said to Father Amorth, "We can do nothing to you because you are too protected." And therefore, in general, according to Father Amorth, everyone can be the object of evil actions. But for the one who prays, who is close to God, and who lives in the grace of God, the situation is different. He is protected. This generates a type of boomerang effect. Many wizards are afraid of the evil spells because they fear that they will fall on themselves.
6 out of 10 people who come looking for an exorcist really don't want an exorcist. What they want is some problem eliminated out of their life, but they're not ready to turn their life over to Christ. I'm thinking of one person in particular. She had made a pact with the devil to receive preternatural powers as a medium, as a clairvoyant. And she would use these powers in necromancy and calling forth the dead and telling people's fortune and so forth. She earned a living out of this, and she gained a great power. She was tantalized by the kinds of things she could see in people and anticipate within them. And that really exhilarated her. Well, the devil, at a certain point, he makes his deals, but there's always more than what you bargained for. And so he came to collect. And he came causing her health to deteriorate and causing just wild phenomena to happen inside her home such that she couldn't sleep. Well, she came to me as an exorcist, hey, get the devil out of my life, but I only want him out in terms of the noise that he's causing in my home and any way that he's attached to my health. But sure as heck, I'm not going to renounce the powers that I got to be a medium, clairvoyant, and so forth. Well, it doesn't work like this. If you're in the devil's employ, or vice versa, if he's in your employ, then you've chosen him as your Lord. And that's who you got. So you can only receive the benefit of Jesus Christ if you choose to walk with Christ. If you walk with Christ, then you're protected by him. If you choose not to walk with him, then you're not. And so exorcism is very much about severing one relationship, a toxic relationship, and forging another one, a wholesome one with Christ.
And finally, number 5. In the book, The Devil is Afraid of Me, Father Amorth shared that he had performed exorcisms on some people for 15 or 20 years who made some great progress, but they were not yet liberated. But there has often been some great progress in their families. Father Amorth shared the case of a woman who was under the care of Father Candido, and which was later handled by Father Amorth too. However, even after many years, she still wasn't liberated to the point where Father Amorth thought that it was useless to carry on any further. But the woman said to Father Amorth, "We are a large family with many siblings. Not one of us went to church, and no one prayed. Since I have had this disturbance, all my brothers and sisters and their families pray and go to Mass. We look for immediate results in the world, while the Lord looks at eternal life. It is providential, therefore, that the woman has been struck. This disturbance has brought all of her family into the church, making them practice again. There are then persons who offer themselves as victims. According to Father Amorth, these people they ask the Lord not to liberate them, and he shared the story of a nun who was possessed by the devil and was never liberated. She offered all her tremendous suffering for the souls in purgatory, for the conversion of sinners, and for her spiritual children, the same goals Jesus had when dying on the cross. All these sufferings offered to God have great value.
And for me, it's not the language, it's the prayers themselves. So in the New Rite, when it came out in 1998, people said that the prayers didn't seem to be very powerful compared to the way that if you translated the Old Rite into English, it seemed to be more powerful, if you will. That's why it was tweaked again in 04 and 05. I think when we have debates about language and whatever, the devil just really enjoys that. Because ultimately, it's the prayer of the church. And if it's the prayer of the church, that's all that should matter. I knew an exorcist one time who was using the New Rite, and he said that the demon manifested and said, "You're not going to try to get rid of me with that translation, are you?" And so he said he stopped using the New Rite, and So I asked him and I said, if the devil is the father of all lies, why would you believe anything that came out of the mouth of that person that was manifesting evil? So I think the devil enjoys it when we argue over language and whatnot, because what really matters is it the prayer of the church and the holiness of the person that's praying? Because if I'm not in a state of grace and I'm doing an exorcism, I'm vulnerable to demonic attacks myself. So if you think about the lives of the saints, what's always around the saint's head? It's the halo. Whose glory are they radiating? Their own? No, they're radiating the glory of God. So a priest in the state of grace doing an exorcism should be radiating the glory and the presence of God in that prayer of the church. And again, in the sacramental life of the church, the personal character of the priest doesn't matter. If the priest is not a good guy, he performs a wedding, the people are still married. If he celebrates Mass, it's still the body and blood of Christ. But in an exorcism, that's not the case. So I really need to make sure that I'm in a state of grace. And I've known exorcists not in the state of grace, which is why when they performed an exorcism, it did not come to an end, because the demon did not have to obey them because of their own sinfulness, which they were not owning up to.
Well then, that is all for the video this time. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you've learned a lot from this. If there's any feedback or suggestion, please don't hesitate to let me know down in the comments below. I know I have weaknesses in my delivery, but I will always try my very best to improve any of those weaknesses. Anyway, for those of you who'd like to support our works, I left the link to our PayPal donation down in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contribution, and prayer. Well then, until the next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless you.